I've played tons of video games, and throughout my career on Twitch and YouTube, I've been exposed to characters of all variety, powerhouse protagonists, spectacular supporting characters, and of course the annoying antagonists, but I don't tend to make videos solely focusing on that particular aspect, usually. Today is an exception, because it was a request from one of you, specifically Defiant1925, who wanted a video dedicated to my favorite video game villains of all time, which I appreciate. Thank you for the suggestion. While I haven't played every single game out there, per my usual rules, I do have 10 villains in mind that stand out, characters that drove the narrative of the games that we've played. Now it goes without saying, but I am talking about the big bad evil guys from various franchises, and if you don't want to have the potential for that happening, then you might want to skip this episode. But if you're still here, then let's begin. Myst as a franchise is something that many of you will scoff and turn away from. I don't blame you. It's not for everyone. The game is devoid of anything sane and ultimately boils down to you being willing to just take in the environment and shoot darts at the wall to figure out what you need to do. In some cases, a switch will be activated, and you'll spend hours trying to figure out what changed in the age that you're in. That's just how it is, but I personally loved it. Myst 1 is a great game. Riven was very confusing, but still massive fun. But Myst 3 Exile is where things got weird. It was a new era with a new engine and new capabilities, and the world we were in, it looked really damn good. The usual suspects returned, Atreus and his wife Catherine, and we even hear callbacks to the two sons of Atreus, Sirrus and Achenar. We also see Yesha as a baby. How cool! But the driving force for the plot involves a scholar named Savidro, and that scholar is a lunatic. He is relentless in his pursuit to hold Atreus responsible for the destruction of his age and the perceived killing of his family by his two sons. While it seems generic, I actually really felt like this was a tremendously fleshed out character, and we see him throughout all of his episodes, his psychotic breakdowns. We hold conversations with him, and the last age of the game involves selective choices and maneuvers to take advantage of Savidro's one moment where he didn't have his steps planned. The one time he lets his guard down. Now there was a plethora of endings for Myst 3. We can betray Savidro, we can piss off Savidro, we can be killed by Savidro, we can get everyone else killed by Savidro, or we can let him go. The final choice is what I believe to be canon, and in the last moment of the game, our kindness in letting Savidro go results in him giving us this little salute, like we were the catalyst for his hope in humanity returning. I love this character, and I feel that if you gave Myst 3 a shake, you might too. For a long time, my fighting game of choice was Street Fighter 2. It was everywhere. The local arcades, Pizza Hut, Little Caesars, Domino's, my cousin had it, my neighbors had it. I think I even achieved sentience in front of a Street Fighter 2 cabinet. You know what I mean? The moment that you realize, oh, I'm in this body. Yeah. It happened when my parents tried to convince me that the attract mode of Street Fighter 2 was me actually playing it. It was at a hotel lobby near Disney World, and I never forgot that. But as a reoccurring boss, Bison is cool. He's the dictator of a shadow organization, and his powers are devastating. He's cocky, he's strong, and he's designed to represent that. To me, he's one of the most recognizable fighting game characters out there, and he's not just a strong fighter, he's literally a tyrant. And with his psycho abilities, he can manipulate minds, control people, and in some cases distort reality. That alone is worth being on this list. Resident Evil always had big lumbering idiots as the final encounters. Resident Evil 1 had the Tyrant, which we beat by technicality due to a scripted event. Resident Evil 2 had William Birkin in his G form, but for Resident Evil 3, we had Nemesis. Now, one of the cooler things about this particular character in comparison to the others on this list is that he is a fairly persistent threat, and his presence, or even the threat of his presence, meshes so well with the plot of the game. It also aids in the flow of the game. Nemesis is a mutated monstrosity that consistently pursues Jill throughout Raccoon City. His attacks are always devastating, and no matter what you do, your main objective when you see him should always be to get the hell out of Dodge, because he will quickly bleed you dry. One of the things I kind of enjoyed about his development is that when we first encounter him, he's just a mindless bioweapon, a husk of an experiment. But as the game goes on, he evolves into a more cognizant threat. He starts using new weapons like his rocket launcher, so he's not some static threat. He shows a sense of self-awareness, and that's a huge deal to me. For many of you, including me, Final Fantasy VI was the greatest thing ever. But for those of you who didn't grow up on the Super Nintendo or didn't really care to check out games from the Super Nintendo and instead maybe focused on Final Fantasy VII onward, you'll find that there is a strange trilogy on the PS1. Because each of the games were different in their own way. Final Fantasy VII focused heavily on story development, 8 focused on unique enemy scaling, and 9 was the faithful return to the high fantasy worlds that we were so familiar with. Don't kick me in the dick, but personally my favorite Final Fantasy from the 5th generation is Final Fantasy IX, but Final Fantasy VIII was just as good, just a different style of gameplay. The one enemy that always intrigued me though was Ultimecia. She's an incredibly powerful sorceress that for all intents and purposes was the first identifiable female antagonist in the series. She's sexy, she's witty, she's cunning, and she's also a gigantic bitch! She's got tattoos, she's manipulative, she's basically one of my exes from high school if she learned magic. Now as a character, she's insanely smart and aware of her power and how her power affects others. She's manipulative and malevolent, exceptionally strategic, and a master of diplomacy, at least from her perspective. And in the fight with her, she will, and I repeat will, ruin your day. She junctions with Griever, whips out high-level spells like nobody's business, and loves to slap you with Hell's Judgment, a magical attack that brings you all, everybody in your party, down to 1 hit point. And she does that often. Chrono Trigger is an amazing game. Throughout my experiences playing action RPGs, nothing really has come close to it, and I believe that's because literally everything about the game is perfect. There's never a point in it where I wanted to give up or stop playing, even when it got tough. There was a desire to keep seeing where the story would go, and that's an incredibly difficult thing for programmers to do. Now, one of the characters that stood out to me was Queen Zeal. While she's not the main problem in the game, she is a problem. She's the ruler of the Kingdom of Zeal, and it is due to her curiosity to maintain power that Lavos was manifested through the Mammon Machine. She was obsessed with Lavos, thinking that she could become immortal through his power. We get to hear all about her because Shala is her daughter, and we learned that because of the Queen, magic was discovered, and it's only gone downhill from there. She holds Lavos in a godlike worship, and the fight we have with her is evidence of just how far she will go to ensure that Lavos is brought to power. Again, not a main antagonist, but a damn good one. Metal Gear as a franchise has always had interesting bosses, and that's because Hideo Kojima is a mad lad with insane creative processes. It seems that his focus has always been, how can I mess with the consumer and how can I do something that they won't expect, which as a philosophy is something I wish that more developers and producers had, because there's so many games that just fit the formula of the genre they belong to, and Metal Gear, at least to me, has always broken away from that. There were countless villains I could add to this list, and there will be another one from this franchise higher up, but the one I wanted to mention today was the end. For anyone who has played Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater, all of the bosses belong to what's known as the Cobra Unit. They're a group of insanely dangerous elite soldiers that each represent an emotion. We have the boss, the pain, the fear, the fury, the sorrow, and finally, the end. The End is an old bag of bones who dedicated his life to being one of the most deadly snipers out there. He's over 100 years old, and the theme associated with him is patience and time, both of which you'll need if you want to beat him. To me, this fight is stealth personified, because you will 100% have to track him down to kill him. This means you'll need to search for his footprints, check for his sniper glint, listen for audio cues, and don't make any sudden moves, because if you do, you will die fast. I know he doesn't maintain a massive presence, but as a bad guy, he's pretty cool. It's even cooler that he can die if you don't play the game for 1 hour after entering the fight. He'll die of old age, and you get a special cutscene because of it. Alternatively, if you want to make this fight a little bit easier, you can use the Konami code in this area to reveal his location on the minimap. Now you know. I don't like Final Fantasy VII. I find it to be overrated, and there's a few reasons why. I feel that the story is okay, but for what they were trying to give us on the PS1, this first true 3D-ish Final Fantasy, the story quickly just becomes a chore to get through. The Midgar portion, totally fine, but after that, it's a bungled mess of what-ifs, flashbacks, and sexual tension. A lot of it. I think I chalk it up to nostalgia bias. I love Ocarina of Time, but there are people out there that say Ocarina of Time is a bad game, and I'm taken back by it. I feel others do the exact same for Final Fantasy VII, and I do think that Sephiroth is cool, but he's more style than substance. But that being said, as a character, he is intriguing, he's evil, but he's also designed to look cool, and he commands a presence really anytime he's on screen, be it flashbacks or by summoning a fucking asteroid to destroy Earth. Plus, One Winged Angel, right? A massively popular song associated with a sexually appealing male character with a very long sword. And to be fair, Sephiroth isn't evil because he wants to be. He's evil because he believes that it's his destiny to be so. He uncovers the truth about Jenova and his origins, and that makes him insane. And much like many other boss characters in the Final Fantasy universe, he does a phenomenal job of getting inside your protagonist's head. And that's not easy. To me, he's a perfect blend of power, design, mystery, and no matter how much I hate the backstory, that plays a key part of it as well. Well, we talked about the end, but what if we went back to Metal Gear Solid 1? Tons of cool bosses, all of which had gimmicks tied to them. Sniper Wolf, that was a nail-biter for me. What about Gray Fox? That's a challenge. Liquid Snake, Revolver Ocelot, Vulcan Raven, and finally Metal Gear Rex. But the one fight and more so villain that stood out to me was Psycho Mantis. To me, this is one of the most creative boss fights I've encountered. It was more than just us versus him, it was us versus ourselves. As a psychologist with telekinetic abilities, he could do things nobody expected, like dodging all of our attacks, unless we put the controller into the second port. Even when we first meet him, he's reading our memory card to call us out for playing other Konami games, and he can change the TV screen, making you think that your TV went apeshit. But what's so insane to me is that because Psycho Mantis had his abilities since he was born, he could always read his father's mind, and he knew, from birth, that his dad hated him. This led to him burning down his village, killing his father, and everyone else. From point A to point B, this guy is a fourth wall breaking machine, and he gives Deadpool a run for his money. But in his dying moments, we do see a sliver of humanity when he says, "This is the first time I've ever used my powers to help someone." All in all, this one encounter completely redefined what a boss fight could be. It made us think outside of the box, which again wasn't abnormal for Hideo Kojima. But I can comfortably say this is my favorite boss fight in the entire franchise to date. We talked about Queen Zeal, but obviously she was just a cog in the wheel for the overall master plan of the story for Chrono Trigger. But there is something bigger, something worse. Lavos. He's an unstoppable extraterrestrial force, and in some ways, he's like Voldemort from the Harry Potter franchise. We don't see him until it matters, and his name alone evokes heavy emotions from the people who know of the legends and what he's capable of. The whole theme of Chrono Trigger is time, and for the entire duration of the game, all events that occur directly align with him landing into the planet we exist on in 65 million BC. So for millions of years, he's influenced history with his name alone. He caused the rise and fall of Zeal, he mutated humans and evolved magic, and in 1999, we all know what happens. He's not a villain that just shows up at the end of a long hallway saying, "Okay, you ready? You got all your items? You good? You ready? You ready to do this? Okay, let's go." No. He's the pace car. His existence drives the entire plot, and that's something that you don't see commonly in video gaming. The fight we have with him, no matter when we fight him, is always interesting and it's always a challenge. And you know that how this fight ends directly aligns with the fate of the world. There is no game over if you die to Lavos. You witness the destruction and failure of your ability to stop this cosmic entity from devouring the planet and life as we know it. We're fighting to rewrite destiny, and he never once says a word to us. His presence alone is what we know, and that's fucking powerful, dude. I've faced countless enemies, monsters of legend, a human who had a little bit too much power, demons from the pits of hell, and even a large fire-breathing turtle and his 30 kids, and nothing mentally prepared me to be absolutely mind-fucked like I did from a laughing clown. Some of you might hate clowns. I don't, even when it was normal in public for random clowns to appear in your local area like the hot moms on the nudie sites, I still didn't mind clowns. Kefka Palazzo begins his story as a normal run-of-the-mill court jester, saying jokes, making people laugh, but behind that makeup, we have an absolute time bomb of a character, descending into madness with the intention of destroying the world. He isn't just a villain, no. He is the purest representation of nihilism, chaos, and carefree violence that I've ever encountered in a video game. He doesn't have some tragic backstory. He simply loves the idea of everything around him going up in flames. Let's see his laundry list of bullshit. He poisoned an entire kingdom, destroyed the world, and he became a god. The whole story for Final Fantasy VI involves a narrative being thrown on its head. We do not win in Final Fantasy VI. We lose. We fail to prevent our world from being destroyed. So what happens in the story is that we recover from our failures with the sole intention of quite literally overthrowing a god. And that's a plot device I had never seen before. We all know what he sounds like, that sarcastic, cacophonous laugh, and the intention of destroying everything simply because he can. His boss fight is also one of the most epic boss fights I've ever encountered, and his musical suite rivals all other themes I've heard in video gaming to date, even One-Winged Angel. Kefka is hands down my favorite villain, and I think it would be impossible to replace him. And that's it for today's episode. What did you think of this list? Are there any villains from video game history that stand out to you? Feel free to share it with the community down below. Speaking of our community, if you made it to the end of this episode, you're already home in our community. We're a gathering of video game enthusiasts that love remembering a time when life was just a little bit easier to live. And if you align with that, you'll fit right in, so feel free to subscribe. Finally, the single most important thing you can do for me is to hit that thumbs up, as it directly aligns with the visibility of the videos and the projects that I work on every single day. As always, from my family to your family, good energy, good vibes. Fortefyre out.